content creation and its intersection with digital media.
This is my first international conference, so I'm feeling really excited to share this with you today. I'm Daisy Dutoit. I'm a non-niche crafter who creates content on Instagram and TikTok. I'm a visual storyteller who cares about access and participation, and I'm doing a PhD on the craft of content creation at the Kingston School of Art, with a focus on the online craft community. As a content creator myself, I've got about 140,000 followers on TikTok and about 57,000 followers on Instagram. And it's in these spaces that I share my own craft practice. And in the last year, through my social media content, I've become what you would call a microcraft influencer, as I've caught the attention of and collaborated with Levi's. I've made content for Kew Gardens, and I was going to include the third thing, but I was told I'm not allowed to until it's released, so keep your eyes peeled. And then I hope by the end of this talk that you'll be curious about the way social media can be social and recognize that content creation can be about creativity. Did you know that a craft can go extinct? And that in the UK, there are now 5 heritage crafts that are no longer practiced and have gone extinct within the last generation. These are cricket ball making, gold beating, lacrosse stick making, mold and decor making, and recently added to the red list of endangered crafts is mouth-blown sheet glass making. Yes, the Heritage Craft Association have drawn up a red list of endangered crafts modelled upon the conservation status system used by the IUCN, and they've created 4 categories of risk to assess the viability of heritage crafts in the UK. And these are extinct in the UK, critically endangered, endangered, and currently viable. For a heritage craft to be considered viable, there needs to be sufficient craftspeople to transmit the craft skills, the intangible cultural heritage, to the next generation. So what I find tragically fascinating is that the UK is one of 13 countries to not recognise that intangible cultural heritage associated with craft as something worth preserving, because they are one of 13 out of 180 to not yet ratify the 2003 UNESCO Convention of the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage. So basically one of 13 countries that just isn't going to work towards protecting and preserving the skills associated with our heritage crafts. Places like Japan, the opposite is true, and even crafts people themselves can be deemed a national living treasure, which is a popular term for individuals who've been certified as preservers of important intangible cultural properties. So there's many reasons why crafts become endangered in the first place, and it's more than just educational or about limited training opportunities. As there has been a steady decline in formal craft education over the last couple of decades, it's also about the market. If people aren't buying, how can a craft with low financial viability survive? It's about competition from overseas markets. It's about cost of rent and access to tools and materials, or crafts where there's a shrinking base of craftspeople to pass on the skills to the next generation, and therefore no mechanism to pass on the often embodied skills and knowledge. And the scary fact is that even if you did want to learn and adopt one of these heritage crafts, many heritage crafts people are at retirement age, and given that certain skills like becoming a horologist can take 5 to 10 years to master, it means that we can literally run out of time because these skills will be lost when the person is no longer here, which is why Japan protects people with the skills in order to protect their heritage. So the Heritage Craft Association is a small charity set up to advocate for traditional heritage crafts and provides a focus for craftspeople, groups, societies and guilds, and works towards a healthy and sustainable framework for the future. So thinking about the future, the role of digital is playing an ever-increasing part in the lives of crafters, as the pressure to be present on social media increases. And while the online world can take you away from the physical, something remarkable has happened in the world of heritage craft. The 2019 Red List marked rug tufting as a critically endangered craft. You know, when you make rugs without the gun, yeah. However, the online craft community started making delicious, dopamine-filled, colourful content of the rug tufting process, using their mobile phones to capture, edit, and then post to Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, influencing others to want a piece of the fun. Suddenly people wanted to own or even learn how to make a tufted rug. And one of the influencers of this movement is artist and content creator Denzel Curry, aka Curry Goat, who's mastered the art of rug tufting as well as the craft of content creation. He posts short, informative, and punchy videos about the process, utilizing YouTube for longer form, informational DIY videos, and Instagram for short, vibrant, and pithy clips. His media shows close-ups of the needle going in and out, the popping sound of the fabric parting, and lines of thread coming through, accompanied by a soft and comforting voiceover teaching people about the craft. His impact has not gone unnoticed. Big brands such as Coach, Burberry, Dickies, and many more have collaborated with him, knowing full well that his content reaches millions of mobile phone screens. And artists like him have helped to move the once critically endangered craft to currently viable, as noted by the 2021 and 2023 publication of the Red List, which is incredible. So there's a new cohort of crafters who are adopting and adding flavour to heritage crafts for the next generation of craft appreciators. Many may assume that the lockdown played a role in this surge of new crafters, but I argue it only accelerated an already growing craft renaissance. And there's actually been a craft revival developing since the advent of the internet, with craft blogs enabling people to form communities, e-commerce sites like Etsy connecting people in a marketplace, and smartphone technology enabling all of this to occur in the palm of the hand. David Gauntlett book, Making is Connecting, is a fascinating insight into this relationship between craft and the online world. In fact, before the pandemic hit, the UK Crafts Council was working on a report called The Market for Craft. And the May 2020 report stated that the younger generation of craft buyers had doubled between 2016 and 2020, and that under 35s, millennials and Generation Z, were accounting for a large portion of the buyers. And while the report recognized the role that social media may have played in this resurgence, it didn't go into any detail other than the interviews with crafters which identified a need for more training opportunities on how to use social media. So whether you have a social media account or not, we can't ignore the power of these platforms and the power that they're building. In fact, the New York Times published an article last year that stated that Gen Z, those born between 1996 and 2010, choose to use TikTok as a search engine over Google, which means that the younger people trust and believe that they gain more value from what they consume in social media than Google, which means that if you aren't there, the space where the next generation spends their attention, then you're not being seen. So while this thought may absolutely terrify you, I've noticed that academics are very busy reading and writing and therefore don't actually have time to waste on social media. I do implore you, don't let something that you don't understand scare you. Find ways to embrace it, to play with it and explore it. Because academics like Elena Kanagalu, who's a lace maker and historian, uses their social media to tell stories about the economic and social history of lace. She creates visually appealing storytelling content about this incredible craft and has millions of people gaining a new appreciation for the time it takes to make one item of lace and the historical significance of this craft. She uses her platform to build an empowered community around her research interests, to promote the talks she delivers and the exhibitions she curates. She uses her social media just like another creative tool in her sewing box. I also hope I'm not making the process of taking photos and videos on your phone and uploading it to Instagram seem easy, because something all content creators can agree on is that making content is a skill. I claim that it's a craft in itself, because even though it's a mostly self-taught, domestic activity that can be perceived as a hobby, it requires a lot of practice to get right, much like knitting a jumper. Anyone can pick up knitting needles, some yarn and a pattern and knit a jumper, all from the comfort of their home. But for anyone who's ever actually tried to do this, you'll know it takes time and a lot of crappy jumpers before you get something that not only you feel proud of, but that others recognize as good quality too. So how can we use social media to influence others of the importance of protecting and preserving endangered crafts and preserve this cultural heritage before it's too late? Can we fabricate another rug tufting moment by encouraging heritage crafters to post more on their Instagram? It won't be easy, but with the right tools and some playing around, it is achievable, as successful content creation requires a number of things to master. It requires tools, patterns, and practice. Tools include the right hardware, like a mobile phone or a tripod or a little lapel mic. Software, like right editing apps or the right social media platforms. But it also requires patterns, because social media isn't a place you turn up, you post and you leave. It's like a dinner party. You don't just walk in and lead the conversation. You go, you listen, you contribute. So to know what type of content to make and share requires that you need to be part of the community. By being present online, watching others and participating in conversations, it will give you an idea of what the etiquette is, the aesthetics, the conversations, the trends, the types of things that work or don't work. And social media is in a constant state of flux, and while the patterns of behavior are created by people, they are governed by algorithms. And many people I talk to don't really take into consideration the role of the algorithm in assisting them to be successful on social media. So being present online doesn't just train you about what to do, it also teaches the machine, the algorithm, to learn about what your interests are as a participant. So you can make a beautiful craft, you can film it, edit it, but unless you do something to please the gods of the algorithm, you won't get the reach that you desire. I like to explain this almost as like a sacrificial goat or something to try and get a good harvest, because you need to give it something that you might not have chosen in your own creative practice. So for example, are you using a video or are you using an image when you're posting on social? If it's a video, how long is the video? Is it 7 seconds? Is it 10 minutes? What format? Is it a full screen, 9:16, or is it 4:3? Music, trending sounds are really important. Trending sounds equal record deals equal money. Instagram's going to push your video if you use a sound that's trending. It's just like financially makes sense. And the type of content you're creating, what niche do you fit into? So your content can be seen by many others who you are not connected with socially. So what I need to take a moment here to explain, many of you may be aware of the evolution of the web and the fact that there's Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3. And just to break it down briefly, I think this algorithm introduction in social media is part of Web 3, but not in the Bitcoin way. So for example, Web 1 was like the web page, it's a broadcast, right? It's a one-way conversation. You have a website, you put your information up, and then people come and read it. Web 2 is when social media came about. It's about being involved in the same space. It's about participating in each other's conversations. So I have an Instagram, you have an Instagram, we're friends, we see each other's content. But what's really interesting is these social medias have moved away from a social first interaction and moved more towards an interest first interaction, which means I like craft, and so I sit back and the machine is going to bring me more and more craft content because it knows I like that. And that keeps me on the app and keeps my attention. So it's less about who you're connected with, and it's more about letting the machine take you to what you want to see. And this is really powerful, and this is happening now, and I think this is an evolution of the social media web. So therefore, if you get the tools and you learn the patterns and you take the time to master the craft, and then you learn what sacrifices the gods of the algorithm want from you, the machine will show your content to those who it believes will be interested in it. And you would be throwing your content into the slipstream that will take it to those who have an interest in the associated interests. And what's scary is that the machine knows us better than we know ourselves. In fact, the Wall Street Journal did a study that found it takes about 2 hours of scrolling on TikTok for the algorithm to learn what your interests are and then tailor your experience to that. So I must add here that although this can all sound very limiting for us who are very busy and don't have time, it can also create new creative constraints, which is where I believe that content creation should be seen as an act of creativity separate to the craft that is being shared. The word content feels empty and like it belongs to the world of marketing, but it can be a creative process. And this is why the online craft community is a fascinating study, because the successful creators are the ones who've taken the time to master and enjoy making two different types of craft, the item and then the content about the item, which are both connected but also separate standalone creative acts. So I've covered a lot of ground here today and probably left more questions than answers, but ultimately something interesting and important and creative is happening online, led by these crafters, and we should take note because it has real world impact to bring an almost dead craft back to life. And while we can't just give a heritage crafter a smartphone and tell them to go viral, what we can do is recognize that this is an area worth our attention and that there's so much scope to create knowledge exchange opportunities. Or, for example, what about content creator in residence programs? Imagine if museums and galleries could create an opportunity for a young person who already has the skills to come in, do a work placement, they gain work experience, and then the museum gets the value of having someone tell really interesting stories for them. So that's the end of my talk. You got my details there. I love talking about this. If anyone wants to have a conversation about it, I'm all for it. Thank you very much.